Okay, so what we're going to do now is walk you through different hardware attachment options and describe to you how best to work with them, adjust them, take them off and put them back on again. So what we're going to do in this first segment is show you how to remove hardware and reattachment. We're going to go ahead and move it from the right-handed side to the left-hand side to show you how that works. I'm going to use at times a drill to make this easier and faster. We recommend care and caution with using drills, especially when tightening things. And I definitely don't recommend using the drill to start screws. I would hand start them first before using a drill or impact driver. So as you saw, we just removed those two screws. That's what's holding on the monoblock. So that comes off pretty easily. There's these two rubber washers, okay? Rubber washers are on top of the holster shell. There are these pass-through posts, which are on the inside or the back side there that the rubber washer is attached to. All right, don't put the rubber washer on the post and then try to stick that through the back. That rubber washer is there to provide a little bit of flexibility, a little bit of cushioning, if you will, and a little bit of tension too to keep this whole system locked together so that it doesn't come apart. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to flip this around. We're going to put this on the other side. The other thing you'll notice with the rubber washers is that they help hold those posts in place for us, which is nice and convenient because I can put those. In fact, while we're doing this, why not? Let's do something a little bit different. Let's go ahead and adjust the ride height. Let's move these up one hole. What that's going to do is actually cause the gun and holster to ride a little bit lower in the belt line. So we'll go ahead and move up the hardware. So we'll put that one through there. And the Modwing, you'll see, will fit basically holes that are 3 apart, okay? So that's why we're putting them here. We're going to go ahead and get that Modwing in place. I am going to hand start that screw there, hand start this one here. Okay, at this point, without getting too crazy, tighten that down. Okay, so that's pretty simple and straightforward how that works. But let's look at the Modwing attachment. This is where some people get tripped up a little bit. We're going to go ahead and first remove this one since we're swapping it around. So we'll back these 2 screws out. You should know that there's actually 2 little bushings, if you will, or they're actually called eyelets, all right? These are actually sitting inside these holes on these Modwings, and the screws bear against those. That's so that the plastic underneath doesn't get marred. It also tightens up the tolerances of those holes. It's actually very intentionally designed for a variety of reasons, which we won't necessarily explain all of that right here, right now. And then we need these to go to the other side as well, these 2 posts. Okay, so I can actually use my Phillips, number 2 Phillips screwdriver to kind of push those through. Those come out. And I don't need to remove the rubber washers, but I'll pull one of these out, or both, depending on, there we go. So you can see what those look like. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get these back in, get the holes aligned. All right, let's push these posts in. Oops, I got flipped around here. We're going to push one in, so we're pushing that into the rubber washer through the hole. Okay, rubber washers are in place. Those 2 screw posts are in place. And we're going to put the Modwing on with our eyelets or bushings. Put the screw in there. I'm going to hand start it here, a little help from the screwdriver. Bushing here in that hole. Hand start this screw. Okay, and we can tighten it the rest of the way with the drill, but we don't want to get too crazy with it. Also, we got to do the retention adjustment now at this point. Before we get to that, though, let's go ahead and flip our Modwing height attachment piece around, because this is currently in a right-hand configuration. That's the cool thing about the Modwing, is it is ambidextrous. It's quite a genius device. So there's a little nut, sits inside that hexagon shaped piece there. Then this goes on, and then our screw, like so. Get it started by hand, tighten it down the rest of the way. There we go. So that's now in the correct orientation. And one thing you may note about some of the holsters is we see there's a gap here and a gap here. That could be used as a visual guide. I can tighten things down until things start getting close to touching. And that's going to get me pretty close to where the retention ought to be for this particular gun. And that feels pretty good. If I wanted a little bit looser retention, I would start by backing off 1/2 turn, and I'd do both of those at the same time. It's a little bit looser, not bad. If I wanted tighter, we backed off a 1/2 turn. Let's go ahead and go 1 full turn, and let's adjust both of those together at the same time. And now we have a very stiff amount of retention. As I mentioned elsewhere in the video, try to avoid having it to where there's a big variance between these. Okay, that's not desirable. It doesn't help with retention characteristics. Now it feels very loose and just kind of sloppy. And if I reverse this, where this one's really tight and this one's really loose, it gives like a really distinct click, but I almost can't get it out of the holster. So it just plays some nasty games with us when we get these two retention screws out of whack. You can look at these rubber washers through the side there, and they should look about even. That's a good indicator when we're about where we ought to be. There we go. That's a good intermediate, it's a fairly firm amount of retention on this particular one, but we just swapped our hardware around from a right-hand configuration Lexington holster to a left-hand configuration Lexington holster. Now let's take a look at the DCC slotted clip variant of the hardware and show you how to work with this hardware. So first of all, let's actually look at this clip here. So this one, I'll go ahead and remove these two screws. There we go. We got that hardware off. You can see how the slotted clip works there with those slots. So when these are mounted onto these, either one or two of these 3 holes, we can have a little bit of upward and downward adjustment in those as well. These are using these shorter posts with 2 pretty narrow, these are 16th inch rubber washers, and then these 1/4 inch screws here. So I like to start by placing a rubber washer on the back side of the DCC clip and push the screw through it, and that'll hold it in place. And we'll do the same thing with this other one. Push the screw through. Okay, so now we have those in place. They're not going to fall off. Then we're going to take these posts, and I'm going to do, I like to do the higher one first. So it's going to be the second screw here. And we're going to start that by hand. Get that started. So now that's in place. Make sure this second one is in the hole, and get our other post and slip that. So I'm holding things in place with my finger from behind, if that wasn't clear. And we're going to get this one started as well. Okay, and then, oh, I just realized I put those in the wrong ones. Silly me. Oh, there's my other screw. We're going to start this again. Well, we have these in place. Okay, so once I've got those, those aren't going to go anywhere. So now we're going to get these posts. I'm going to use my finger. My middle finger works pretty good to hold that in place. And I'm going to mount in these 2 lower holes here because that matches up the best with this other clip here that you'll see. So I'm going to hold that in place in that middle hole, which is the second screw. We're going to get this started here. All right. And then this one here. Okay, so those are started. And now while holding the posts from behind, I can tighten that down. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's take a look at this other side now so you can see how that works. So what you'll see here is we have the Modwing. It's got these eyelets in there. All right, make sure that those, I mean, they will fall out. Just make sure you don't lose them, and make sure when we reattach everything that they are back in place. We have this 1/4 inch spacer here, and you'll note that it has a recessed side and a flat side. The recessed side, that's another purpose of these eyelets, sets on top of those eyelets. So this spacer kind of locks into place, like so. And then these two 1-inch screws are going to pass through the spacer, through the Modwing, and then ultimately into the post on the other side of the holster, like so. So that's the order of the hardware here. So Modwing, eyelets, spacer, clip, and screws. Similar to the other holsters you'll see, we've got rubber washers in there for retention, spacing, and adjustment. And then we got our posts here. So let's just go ahead and reattach all this so you can see how that goes. So I'm going to put that Modwing with eyelets on, put the spacer on, and then we're going to slip our clip with screws into the holes. I'm going to look where I want this to be aligned with the other clip. Let's go ahead and get these started. So those are started, and I want these generally about the same height. Now keep in mind, I probably just overdid that one a little bit. Keep in mind that not only are these screws holding this hardware on, but they are also maintaining our level of retention. And so generally we're going to have this be tight enough that the retention is tight enough for safe concealed carry use. That's in kind of an intermediate light amount of retention. I'm going to go ahead and tighten this up a 1/2 turn each. We want to do that retention adjustment equally where possible. That's a bit better. That feels nice and firm, but not too difficult to get it to release from the holster when I draw. So there you go. That's the way we work with the DCC slotted clips on a Lexington holster. Now let's take a look at a holster with 2 soft loops. You should know that these soft loops are also referred to as pull the dot loops because the actual button here has a little dot that's imprinted or it's actually punched into the upper portion of that button. That's an indicator that for these to release, we have to pull the dot. We have to pull the button from the dot side. If I tried to release this from the bottom or from the sides, it will not release. It will only release in one direction. Consequently, these will only snap in one direction, which is from the bottom to the top in that fashion. Okay, so that's important to understand. Inside here we have 1 screw. We can back that out. This is the other half of the button snap. Okay, that was held on. Then the soft loop itself, and then behind there is this little screw post. So attaching this is actually quite straightforward. I'm going to go ahead and change the right height on this particular one, or we could make it so that we could make it cant adjustable. One thing that's nice about these soft loops is by choosing these different holes, we can change for the width of the belt itself. So in this position, I believe this accommodates a 2-inch belt. We can go to this hole, that'd be 1 3/4 inches. I can go to this hole, and that'd be 1.5 inches wide belt. And you can cut off the remainder if you choose to do so. Let's go ahead and just keep it simple, the 2-inch. And I can press that onto that post and kind of get that to hold in place a little bit. Put the snap portion on, get my screw through the hole there. I'm going to hand start this. Carefully with the drill, I'll go ahead and finish it. Okay, and just like that, we have adjusted that. If I wanted to adjust the cant using these soft loops, I can loosen that just a touch, orient the soft loop in the angle I want. I'll do the same thing with this one. Just swing that a little bit like so. And now you'll see that it's set up for a forward cant. Pretty easy and straightforward. So another attachment option that I don't have currently mounted on a holster, but this is the soft loop on a tuckable strut. The reason why it's tuckable is because these struts are going to mount on the lower portion of the holster, and the back side is loose so that you can tuck a shirt in behind it and make this actually a tuckable inside waistband carry solution with the soft loops. It will mean the soft loops are actually visible on the outside of the belt, so that's up to you as far as to whether that is acceptable for you concealment wise. But what I wanted to address with these is you'll see that due to this slot here and this hole here, there's also a hole up here. You can actually adjust these struts for cant angle this way and this way, but you can also adjust the loops themselves on the strut for angle this way and this way, which is kind of cool. All right, so I can actually adjust the strut one way and the loop another way if I had to. That's where this gives you a lot of adjustability. The other thing that's really nice about these is these struts have a pretty generous slot here, which allows me to move the soft loop up and down considerably. Again, giving me a lot of options there for ride height adjustments when I use the soft loops with a strut. So that is just one more option there, and there you have it.